Kindred Longevity Lifestyle Designers. This is Zach here from Secrets of Longevity and Humans.com, as well as martin-kilgour.com. In the world of nutritional health as well as raw food specifically, I hear a lot of emphasis and fear of anything that can be labeled as stimulating, and people often use it incorrectly as well in terms of labeling foods and herbs and superfoods and supplements, etc. My feeling is that the definition of stimulating is too broad, and so we need to let go of that definition completely when talking about things we ingest for our health. If we consider the word stimulating and think about it, its opposite is going to be depressing or relaxing. So anything that can be described as a stimulant is going to be the opposite of something that could be considered a depressant or almost have like an opiate type of an effect. Now, in terms of defining things and using blanket statements, I hear some things like people saying all herbs are stimulants and we don't need to use them. However, within herbalism there's a lot of herbs that would be described as depressants, such as valerian. So I don't know anyone who's ever taken valerian and suddenly got up and felt all energetic and, gone out and ran a marathon. It is definitely a depressant. So using a blanket statement that all herbs are stimulating is ridiculous and just uneducated. Now, specifically about foods, when it comes to foods that are stimulants and some foods are depressants, we can think of it as a range. On one hand, we have something that's very stimulating, and then we get further and further towards neutral, and we get more and more depressing. So we could say overeating is very depressing to the body because it makes you overstuffed and actually sleepy, like people do on Thanksgiving or any other holiday where people overeat. And on the other hand, if you were to consider eating a very light meal as very stimulating to your energy because you're not spending so much time digesting food, you could say that's stimulating. Now, is that a bad thing? No, of course not. So it's really the way in which the word stimulation is used that people get confused. Now, when we consider the properties of a stimulant, there's a wide range of properties in that, and this is, again, where people get confused because they blanket statements say all stimulants are bad, and they're going to cause problems with your adrenals, etc. Whereas, really, the bad stimulants are going to be the ones that cause demineralization of our body from causing the adrenal glands to release too much cortisol or adrenaline over the long run. So when people say ginseng is a bad stimulant, that's ridiculous because it's used as a longevity herb for thousands of years. It's been used that way. Now it has stimulating properties, but it's not stimulating the adrenal glands. It actually does have some tonification properties for the adrenal glands, making them healthier, but it stimulates in other ways through increasing nitric oxide production in the body, through increasing peripheral circulation in the limbs. So these are things that can be beneficial if it's right for you. An example of a bad stimulant done to an excess would be caffeine, the one everyone's familiar with. Whereas another stimulant like theobromine has actually, in humans, very beneficial properties. And I've gone over this in my video about, it's a 6-part series on cacao and whether it's actually bad or not. So you can go into my archives and find that video if you just search, Secrets of Longevity, my username, and cacao, and you're going to get the video series pulled up, and you can see all the benefits that theobromine has with it. And there really aren't negative effects unless you happen to be someone who can't handle those and needs to rebuild your body first so that you can handle something like theobromine. Now, there's other things like green tea, which is stimulating, yet its main stimulating properties are theophylline. And in some cases, this might not be the greatest for some people. Yet someone with something like asthma is going to have their lungs opening up and expanding because theophylline is a bronchial stimulator, whereas theobromine is a cardiovascular stimulator, whereas caffeine is a central nervous system stimulator. So it's the central nervous system stimulation that is actually harmful when done to an excess and when done for the long term. So in describing all this, I just want to sort of get people's minds clear on the words they use and the impact that that has on understanding health and nutrition. And also on the other end of the spectrum, we have foods that are relaxing or depressing. And just because the word depressing has been used to describe a condition such as depression doesn't mean that anything that's sort of lowering of your energy and overall alertness is a bad thing. There's times when a really strong depressant is necessary if we have to go into a surgery. They give you a very strong depressant, and although we like the thought of just getting some acupuncture so that we don't feel that part of our body while they're doing surgery on it, not everyone's in that place of exceptional health where they can have that work for them. Another instance would be someone who has a really hard time falling asleep at night. They need something that sort of brings their energy down. And although we don't want to get hooked on these types of things and use them as a crutch, they can be useful at times and in the right situation. And then in other instances, there are certain foods that do act as a reducing of alertness or excess stimulation. And these are the things that are a little to the right or left of the central neutral point. Not all foods are in the neutral point, and it's this desire to be balanced which has caused people to think, oh, only foods that are neutral are good. Yet that really limits us, because when we consider the energetics of food, whether they're yin or yang, and have that effect in the body, then we know that if we're eating a lot of stimulating spicy food, we want to counterbalance that with maybe some depressing or reducing of alertness type of foods. And also seasonally, we want to eat more depressing foods in the winter to keep our energy internalized, where spicier foods in the summer, which bring about more alertness, are more appropriate. That's why you see all the spicy type herbs and stuff being used in the tropics, because they open up the pores, they cause you to sweat and lose the extra alertness, or in this case it's heat in the form of sweat. It opens up your pores and you can actually breathe that way and release those things. Whereas in very cold climates, they eat very bland or depressing foods to help keep that energy internalized. Now, to a certain extent, you can use a little bit of a warming or stimulating food in the winter to warm up your body, but when it's taken to excess, you're losing that excess heat through your pores. And the opposite is true. In the summer, you can use a little bit of a cooling food to cool yourself down, but too much of a cooling food causes an imbalance in the summer season. So food energetics, in terms of yin and yang, heating and cooling, stimulating and depressing, is a complicated subject, and I'd like to talk about it more at another time. However, I just wanted to touch on this and get it across that if you don't have an understanding of it, it can lead to confusion, and we can't vilify one end of the spectrum over the other, because we need balance. We don't need to be all the way one way or all the way the other. That's when you get the imbalance, is when you vilify the other side.